It's the fluorescent blue reminder of beverage rarity, but one with a fascinating hidden story. I'm Mark the Overweight Survivor, and today I'll be your guide to the history of Nuka Cola Quantum and its secret research under Project Cobalt. Nuka Cola is a fun part of Fallout history, a carbonated beverage mimicking Coca-Cola of our world. The drink was the flagship product of the Nuka Cola Corporation and a symbol of the United States and Fallout's past. It would be introduced in 2044 and quickly became the most popular soda in the American market. It would of course never really cease being popular even after the bombs fell, as the extensive manufacturing operations ensured enough bottles were in circulation even to be enjoyed by wasteland survivors into the 2200s. The corporation saw an incredible level of influence, money, and expansive efforts, leading to the opening of its own amusement park called Nuka World on May 1, 2050. The pre-war era was an advantageous one for the expanding company, but shortly before Fallout's old world ended, Nuka Cola would rapidly see development, involving an unlikely partner, the US military. Nuka Cola, of course, didn't just see one flavor within its catalog, as not long after its debut there would be a bevy of variants introduced. Some of these leaned into repurposing existing patents, like Nuka Grape, created from the formula for grape pearl soda, designed originally by Joni Chang. Similarly, Nuka Cherry would debut after the company acquired Merle's Very Cherry Soda, and several other internal products would follow. In 2076, with the United States embroiled in the Sino-American War for 10 years, many government research projects were fully operating or nearing completion. We already covered concepts like Liberty Prime in earlier videos, as well as power armor, and the US government decided to explore additional ways to make the most of its mobile power suits with more theoretical applications. Around the same time, the Nuka Cola Corporation, led by its founder John Caleb-Bradberton, had recruited and employed many of the world's best chemists to its research and development team, known as the Beverageers. The growing research division of Nuka Cola had become so talented and impressive in the private sector that a level of scarcity grew within the biochemical engineering community. As the United States sought talent to shore up its capabilities to research chemical and biological weapons to combat communist China, a solution began to emerge: a joint venture between the beverage manufacturer and the Army Research Laboratory. Bradberton, of course, like many of those in Fallout's world with immense financial and corporate powers, had spent a decent amount of time considering how he would outlast the impending nuclear doom that would envelop the planet in just a short time. Several different world parties had explored possible solutions to surviving the apocalypse, like forced ghoulification as an example. And through Bradberton's connections, he had learned of one initiative that the government had already buried considerable research into: the LEAP-X program, otherwise known as the Life Extension and Prolongation Program. The US government had been developing a concept to keep organic tissue and a human subject alive indefinitely, research that had begun roughly around the mid-2070s. The program initially began as a living biosuit to preserve the human body, but it quickly required too much power and complexity, leading to a maximum amount of 15 pounds of organic matter that could be kept alive. Ultimately, the concept couldn't be made small enough for a suit, but it would integrate cryogenic freezing and enough machinery to fill several rooms. Regardless, the Nuka Cola CEO latched on to the continuing research for the program and decided to lend his Beverageer team, as well as considerable funds he'd embezzled from his Nuka World amusement park, to end up completing a partnership. Both the Nuka Cola Corporation and the United States government found the means to join forces to propel the conceptual project forward. But what was the project exactly? How does it involve carbonated beverages? The Beverageers of Nuka Cola were given an impossible task: to somehow identify a usable weaponized compound to complement the United States Armed Forces technologies. Led by scientist Dr. Rex Meacham, a secret facility would be immediately created underneath the World of Refreshment, which had served as a manufacturing plant and park attraction as a bottling facility for the Nuka World amusement park. The fast-moving creation of the testing facility created drama amongst the Beverageers, as Meacham had agreed to the project almost as quickly as he was asked by John Caleb-Bradberton himself, with Meacham and Dr. Kate Levitt being documented in an argument left behind at the former lab.
You wanted to talk, so talk.
Don't take that tone with me, Rex. You know exactly why I'm pulling you aside.
You told Bradberton our team would work on Project Cobalt without asking the rest of us first.
I don't have to consult with any of you first. I'm the lead beverageer, remember? There's a reason JC put me in charge, you know. He trusts me to make the hard decisions and make them quickly.
Are you even listening to yourself? JC? What, are the two of you best buddies now?
Despite the differences in opinion, Meacham and Levitt would be joined by two more core beverageers on the project, which included Doctors Kevin Bennell and Edmund Medford, and the team would dedicate excruciating hours over a course of several months. Meacham and Levitt had been close in their initial relationship before Project Cobalt, but working under the supervision of General Braxton of the U.S. Army had put a strain on the two scientists. The project also saw constant check-ins from Nuka Cola's founder John Caleb-Bradberton, further increasing the pressure the research team was under. Fortunately, the team's discoveries would begin to bear fruit. Meacham, RMNC 09871113. It's been a grueling few months, but we finally have something concrete we can show Bradberton. None of us have left the lab in the past 3 weeks, so I'm giving the others vacation time while JC and I go over the data with General Braxton. The sooner he signs off on the research, the sooner we can start testing. The discovery Meacham was referencing was strontium-90, a resilient customized isotope possible of many potential applications. According to Meacham's notes, strontium's ability to stay stable up to 127 degrees Celsius and behave similarly to nitroglycerin made it a powerful explosive that the beverageers were able to detonate safely on a repeated basis. Early research also made the isotope popular due to its ability to give off a bright blue glow, something that Meacham found marketable right away. It didn't take long to advance the isotope in numerous tests. After getting the final okay on our data from General Braxton, we began the actual synthesis process. Based on our initial data, we went with a strontium-90 derivative. It was an immediate success. The weapons we applied the new bluish payload material to was amplified well beyond our expectations. Ironically, with a slight tweak to the synthesis, we ended up with a totally stable and relatively safe additive that could give a drink a unique bluish glow. I don't know why I was thinking soft drinks at that point. I suppose there was a little bit of beverageer left in me after all. You heard that correctly. Let's take a radioactive isotope and use it for military-grade purposes, and also consider drinking it? Meacham and the beverageer team quickly provided breakthroughs to the U.S. military, Bradberton, and their collaboration with teams in Washington, D.C. One concept in particular was the Nuka Nuke, mini-nuke technology that strontium-90 greatly enhanced the damage output of by 50%. While the weapon didn't make it outside of the prototype phase, the highly dangerous and capable armament can still be found in Bradberton's bunker in the late 2200s. Additional discoveries would include the Nuka Quantum Grenade, and weaponized versions of the Thirst Zapper, Nuka Cola, and more. Alongside these weapons, however, was a larger discovery in applying the strontium isotope to power armor. Meacham's team would apply the isotope compound to a suit of XO1 power armor, which they learned could not just amplify the energy of munitions, but could store incoming energy on the XO1 suit itself. In-game, this brought a legendary status to the suit's capabilities, allowing for increased action point refresh speed, making it one of Fallout 4's greatest wearable power armors. Its bright blue paint scheme and automotive-style lettering make it a sleek piece of pre-war technology, but much like the Nuka Nuke, did not see wide-scale production due to the timing of the Great War. What the beverageer team was able to move faster on, however, was integrating the isotope into Nuka Cola products directly. After discovering strontium's capability to shine intensely and longer than other similar Nuka Cola products like Nuka Cola Quartz and Victory, Meacham would go on to give the drink its signature name of Quantum, which would quickly be adopted by leaders involved with the project, and it began its journey from idea to production in a very short period of time. Bradberton particularly loved the Project Cobalt byproduct as a new path forward for the company, which was marketed to have a fourth quarter 2077 release in the Americas. It would feature twice the calories, twice the carbohydrates, twice the caffeine, and twice the taste, according to its advertising. It would tweak the formula not just in color, but also showcase a new flavor profile with a pomegranate essence unique from the base Nuka Cola version, introducing an 18th flavor to the overall chemical makeup. Quantum's journey to being approved for human consumption was not without several complications, as while it was absolutely eye-catching, at first it was by no means safe for anyone to drink. Even though it would pass inspections by the Food and Drug Association, its overall path to production was deadly. Facts kept from the general public by Nuka Cola. Initially codenamed Sea Lion, Quantum was put into testing and production in Nuka Cola's Washington, D.C. facilities, where trials of the drink were performed after the isotope was thought safe enough for testing, which Meacham would go on to describe in his personal terminal.
We had the boys over at the laboratory in Washington, D.C. lend us a hand with the live subject testing. Isotopes CE-770 and CE-772 were close, but caused all sorts of problems with the test subjects. But when we hit CE-774, it was that eureka moment we were waiting for. No deaths, only a few mild cases of dizziness and other benign side effects. A new flavor was born.
It's important to drive into Meacham's words here, as the term problems represents his unique way of saying that the strontium-90 isotope literally killed people. Isotopes CE-770, according to Nuka Cola's own test reports, were particularly damning.
Isotope CE-770 is proven to be a disastrous failure. All the test subjects suffered severe internal organ failures and died within 3 days of ingestion. We recommend the immediate destruction of container A32 in the production rooms and suggest switching to isotope CE-772. Please send standard Nuka condolences, fruit and cheese packages to test group members' families.
Isotope CE-772 would go on to cause 4 fatalities, 12 major internal organ failures, and 32 test subjects with internal radiation burns. It was not until shifting away from these early isotopes that finally, only mild dizziness, nausea, and 1 instance of impaired vision struck the test subjects. Nuka Cola as a corporation was quite the opportunist, leading into their user waivers to dodge legal ramifications for tester fatalities. The beverage corporation did find a way to address the situation, with the not at all tone-deaf Nuka condolences fruit and cheese baskets sent out to the prototype testers' families. While Quantum's history is definitely filled with internal strife and literal bloodshed, the soft drink, of course, did eventually begin to hit markets in the weeks before Fallout's bombs fell in October 2077. The Washington, D.C. Nuka Cola plant served as the only major location producing it on a commercial scale, giving a lore-based reason for why the drink only appeared on the East Coast, as it simply did not have enough time to travel any further. The Nuka Cola bottling plant in Nuka World, however, also produced small batch runs, which allowed for it to appear within the Boston Commonwealth, of which some shipments can be found where they were abandoned after production. What many may not know, however, is that the Project Cobalt story didn't necessarily stop just because Fallout's old world ended. There were many internal complications with the beverageers involved in developing Nuka Cola Quantum. We've already described the infighting that happened between lead scientist Rex Meacham and his subordinate Ruth Levitt. This was a situation that never fully resolved throughout the ongoing Cobalt project. Threats that were only mitigated by Meacham changing her role as a contributor to certain aspects of the research, and she would go on to become lead scientist on the quantum beverage pursuits as a result. Levitt, however, continued to struggle with her ethics in working for the U.S. government, and her attitude towards them only pushed a further wedge between her and Meacham. She had escalated the situation to the point where, despite threats from John Caleb-Bradberton to blacklist her from the industry, she still stood firm on moving on after isotope research on quantum had completed. The beverageers attempted to convince her to stay despite her wishes to leave, but by this point it was already October 23, 2077, and Bradberton had activated a panic button trapping the entire team within their secured lab. Despite the threat of what awaited them outside the lab's doors, Levitt would attempt to break out, leading to a showdown between the research team.
You're crazy. At first, I thought you were just driven, but I was wrong. You're absolutely crazy. Why don't you pull out some of your secret recordings you've been making of us? You know, the ones you think we don't know about? Play them back and listen to yourself over the last few weeks. Listen to how goddamn insane you sound. Well, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with you, and I'm done hiding down here waiting until you snap.
Get away from the door controls, Kate. I'm not kidding.
A gun? So what are you gonna do? You going to shoot me now? Is that what this has come to? I said this to you a few months ago, and I'll say it again. Go to hell, Rex, and goodbye.
Oh my god! You shot her! She's gone.
I had to do it, Kevin. She left me no choice. Now let's take care of this mess and get back to work.
Meacham, according to his own terminal entries, truly loved Levitt, but his madness would get the best of him as isolation set in, as her death wasn't actually the first within the group. Only days before, Dr. Edmund Medford unalived himself via hanging in his personal quarters, meaning that only Meacham and Kevin Bennell were the last members remaining in the lab. At Meacham's insistence, Cobalt research continued despite no orders to press on, which by 2078 led Bennell to also attempt an escape through the bunker's custom reactor. Meacham once again turned violent, wounding Bennell as he attempted to leave through the overflow pipe that branched off of the main lab area. Unfortunately, due to a combination of the radiation from the area and gunshots suffered at the hands of Meacham, Bennell would too pass at the service station of the tunnel. Meacham himself would not survive much longer than his fellow researchers, but he would survive long enough to complete Project Cobalt's mission. He would eventually succumb to radiation poisoning himself. The oddity in his dedication, however, was that the military forces he thought would rescue them never came, and despite all his efforts, it makes you wonder, what was it all for exactly? One of the strangest developments in Project Cobalt, however, lays with Nuka Cola founder John Caleb-Bradberton and the LeapX program he so desperately sought to be a part of. While the Beverageers met an end with violence and eventual insanity, Nuka Cola's founder didn't exactly perish in the same way, at least not all of him. John Caleb-Bradberton's infatuation with the LeapX program was based around his desire to survive the Great War. But if you remember, the limitations of the government's research only allowed for about 15 pounds of organic matter to stay preserved, with its mix of cryogenic freezing and machine automation technologies. So basically, Bradberton's head would be able to survive. But that's about it. It's very Futurama in concept. What the Nuka Cola Corporation didn't quite know, as well as those on Project Cobalt, was that Bradberton had actually underwent the procedure to remove his head from his body on April 2nd, 2077, 6 months before Fallout's bombs fell. Many of the funds that Bradberton had extorted from Nuka World not only funded government research, but also served to create his own personal vault underneath his office, which would house his LeapX program technology and the housing for his head. In doing so, Nuka Cola's top executive relinquished control of his duties to his executive assistant Peyton Huxley, leaving his status a mystery to the rest of the world. Bradberton's obsession with surviving the Great War definitely paid off, as he was able to survive worldwide nuclear devastation, but in doing so he'd remain isolated underground for the next 200 years, which he'd come to find out was a fate worse than death. Despite being trapped with no means to escape, he'd still be proud of the company he created. But with no way to move, he would sit in waiting, hoping one day that someone would arrive to put him out of his misery. In the end, the fates of those involved in Nuka Cola's legacy may not have been well known to the entire world, but their stories act as a very real cautionary tale, one filled with character flaws of many kinds, whether it be pride, untethered ambition, or denying the price that all men eventually pay, that being death. Project Cobalt might have been completed based on the problems its team set out to solve, but despite these discoveries, they would have absolutely no impact on the war they sought to win. And with that, I thank you for joining me as I explored Project Cobalt and the journey of Nuka Cola Quantum from concept to finished product. Were there any facts about the radioactive soft drink that I missed? Let me know in the comments. For more content just like this video, consider subscribing to this channel, where I create weekly Fallout discussions on lore, cut content, and many other topics. As always, Wastelanders, thank you for watching. This is Mark the Overweight Survivor, signing off.